Well, for more insight into Hungary's stance on the Ukraine war, I'm joined by somebody who has probably one of the toughest jobs in the world right now, the country's Foreign Minister, Peter Szijjarto, for a CNN exclusive interview. Well, thanks very much for joining us in our studio today. So we flashed out some of the statements that your Prime Minister has made. But help us understand this, because in recent days, he has also made some strong statements opposing Russia. And to quote him here, he's described the Ukraine war as a clear aggression and that a sovereign Ukraine is needed to stop Russia posing a threat to the security of Europe. So, Foreign Minister, clear the air for us. What is Hungary's stance, current stance on the war? And does this also signal that there's been a change in relationship between your Prime Minister and Mr. Putin?
Well, we are a neighboring country. So the war in Ukraine has severe and immediate impacts on us. And furthermore, it is not widely known, but there are Hungarian people dying in this war. Given the fact that we have a significant Hungarian community living in the western part of Ukraine, some 150,000 Hungarians. Of course, they are citizens of Ukraine. So they are being mobilized to the Ukrainian army. Many of them are being deployed to the front lines, and unfortunately, many of them are dying. So we as a country being severely affected and representing a nation, members of which are dying, we call for peace very loudly and in a very determined way. We condemn the war, no question. We do condemn the war. We have been condemning the war from the very beginning. We stand up for the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine. But we do believe that the best way to save lives, or the only way to save lives, is to come to an immediate ceasefire and immediately to start discussion about how to make a long-term peace agreement in the region. I think, or we think, that the most important duty of the international community now should be to save the lives of the people. There are hundreds or thousands of people dying on a daily basis, totally senseless, and we have to stop that. And you cannot stop it with further deliveries of weapons. You can stop it with an immediate ceasefire and then peace talks.
What about your Prime Minister's relationship with Mr. Putin? Has that changed somewhat with these differing statements he's made?
Well, look, we have always had a pragmatic relationship with Russia, given the fact that Russia is a regional fact. We are a small landlocked country in Central Europe. We are located close to Russia, in the vicinity of Russia. It's easy to judge the situation from the other side of the ocean or from thousands of kilometers away. But for us, Central Europeans, Russia is a fact and will be a fact in the future as well. Since the outbreak of the war, the relationship is much less intense, of course. It is being limited to those areas which are not being under sanctions. So it's mainly an energy-focused cooperation, given the fact that based on the physical infrastructure in the region, currently it is physically excluded that Hungary would be able to supply itself the necessary volume of energy without the Russian sources.
So you've mentioned, like, for pragmatic reasons, based on the kind of energy, 80% of your natural gas comes from Russia.
A little bit more than that, yeah.
And a little bit more than that. But in terms of, your stance on the war, I'm wondering how much of that is dependent based on the energy and the economics of things, because it adds that extra layer of complexity in your relationship with Russia and taking a stance on the war. Yeah,
we definitely should not confuse things which have nothing to do with each other. So we condemn the war regardless of what kind of dependency is out there from our perspective towards Russia. We do condemn the war, and we want this war to be stopped immediately, because every minute this war lasts, more people are dying. So therefore, for us, stopping the war is the most important issue. But when it comes to the relationship to Russia on the energy field, you have to be aware that if we cut the Russian sources, the other parts of physical infrastructure are not enough in order to supply the country with the necessary volume of gas or oil. So in order to be on the safe side, in order to be able to ensure the security of the energy supply of the country, we need to cooperate with Russia. And in this regard, this cooperation has been a pragmatic one.
Yeah, but Foreign Minister, other Eastern European countries, they've been able to wean themselves off. So would Russia, be able to wean themselves off this dependence on Russian energy at some point?
Yeah, but their geographic location is different. We are a landlocked country in the heart, in the center of Central Europe, and other countries have a different infrastructural situation. Our infrastructural situation is very clear. If the Russian sources are being cut, we cannot buy enough gas, we cannot buy enough oil because of physical infrastructure. So it's very important to understand that the issue of energy supply is not an ideological issue. The issue of energy supply is not a matter of political taste. It's purely physical. You need a source and you need pipeline. And if you miss one of the two, then you cannot ensure the safety of supply of your country. And we have a responsibility towards our own people, towards our own citizens, towards our own industry, that they need to have enough source of energy in order to be supplied.
Would you then say that, Hungary's stance, basically, or your strategy is to kind of play the war down the middle, where you support for the West when it's strictly necessary, and yet you kind of leave the door open for Mr. Putin?
No. What we do believe is that the channels of communication must be kept open. Because if you close the channels of communication, you basically give up the fundamental hope for peace. Because if there's no communication, then there's no hope for peace. All wars should be ended or should be stopped by discussion, by negotiation, by dialogue. Therefore, the channels of communication must be kept open. But, it's not a question that we belong to NATO, we belong to the European Union, we are loyal members of both organizations, but we have to stay on the ground of common sense and rationality.
Right. And, well, you are an EU member, NATO member as well. I'm wondering, to what extent would you say that the Ukraine war has impacted and affected Hungary's relationship with the EU? Because it seems like it's going downhill. And I'm wondering, what steps is Hungary taking to mend those ties?
Well, look, our, let's say, challenging relationship with Brussels has not been originated from the war. We have taken office in 2010. We are a rightist, Christian democratic, patriotic government, which considers national interest as very important. And we are a successful government. And this combination cannot be digested by Brussels, because Brussels represents the international liberal mainstream. And the international liberal mainstream, both in media and politics, simply hate what we are doing in Hungary, and they hate that we are successful. But we are elected by the Hungarian people. We are responsible to the Hungarian people. So this challenging relationship originates from this fact. Now, when on the war, our position is crystal clear. We are living in the neighborhood. Members of our nation are dying. This gives us a totally different dimension of understanding the situation than others, far away, hundreds or thousands of kilometers away. Because if you look at the risk of escalation, where does the risk of escalation appear for the first time? In the neighborhood, right? Yeah. Not on the other side of the ocean, not thousands of kilometers away. So therefore, we are super interested in peace to come as soon as possible, because this situation is dangerous for us. Whenever there's a war in the neighboring country, it's dangerous for you.
Yeah, so let me put the question to you, Foreign Minister, that picture this, right? In the event that Hungary gets invaded like the way Ukraine was, wouldn't you like the same kind of support that NATO and EU has been giving your country?
Well, we were invaded. Our history is full of being invaded, and our history is full of struggle and fight for freedom by the brave Hungarian people. We got rid of the communists in 1990, so we know very well how it feels to be invaded. Now we are members of NATO, which gives us a safe situation. We are a member of the strongest defense alliance of the world. And once again, this war is unacceptable. This war must be condemned.
Now, speaking of NATO memberships, so Finland's NATO membership, Hungary approved it after more than 250 days of them signing up. Sweden, they're still waiting in the wings. So tell us, what more can Sweden do to change your mind and, and for you guys to say, okay, you're in?
It is not necessary to change the mind of the government, because the government is supportive. Therefore, we have submitted the proposal to the parliament. I myself have done so since I was responsible for that. So the approach of the government is positive and supportive. Now, we have a big parliamentary group. We have a 2/3 majority. And the parliamentary group has not decided yet when this issue is going to be on the agenda of the parliament, when vote will take place. You know, you have to know one thing. The Swedish government officials have been very hostile to Hungary in the recent years. They have made very unfair statements about Hungary. They have insulted the Hungarian people on multiple occasions by questioning the democratic nature and the legitimacy of the political structure in Hungary. And our MPs, you know, who have won the elections on many occasions in their own constituencies, are simply sensitive on being questioned in their positions, whether they are democratic and whether they are legitimate. So they are, I think, counting on some kind of gesture, some kind of guarantee that will make sure that such kind of insults would not happen in the future.
I just want to get your thoughts of playing Peacemaker. Right now, it seems like China is trying to play quite a big role in that. And do you think, with China's ongoing friction, with the EU, I mean, how are they supposed to do that?
Well, when it comes to the peace plan of the Chinese, we respect it, because it's about peace and it exists. We need peace plan to exist. We need a peace plan to be on the table as a basis for negotiation. Therefore, we respect the Chinese government to put together such a plan and put on the table, and we support that discussion about peace plans should be finally started, because that brings us closer to peace. When it comes to EU-China relations, we are absolutely against decoupling. We are in favor of connectivity. We are in favor of a rational, pragmatic, and respect-based cooperation with China. Because if you break the relationship between China and the European Union, you cause huge damage to the European economy. Because European economy is dependent on the Chinese economy on many industries and many areas. There's more than 870 billion euros of trade between the European Union member states and China. So decoupling would be a very bad idea.
Absolutely. And not to mention that China was actually your largest investor in 2022, and clearly your country has benefited a lot from these investments.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's say, when Emmanuel Macron, he made those statements that basically drew criticisms, talking about, that Europe should not follow US or China's policy on Taiwan. I'm wondering, what is Hungary's stand on this issue of Taiwan in the event of a conflict?
Well, first of all, when it comes to President Macron, I think his statements about the strategic autonomy of Europe are refreshing. So it's great that he speaks about cooperation between China and Europe. We do not want neither the European Union nor the NATO to become an anti-China bloc, because that would be really bad. Now, when it comes to our relationship to China, it is very clear that we follow the one China principle.
Right. So, well, with this ongoing deepening Sino-Hungarian ties, are you worried that this may pose further challenges to the whole EU unity on China, especially now that Hungary's relations with EU is kind of like deteriorating?
Look, I don't feel such a threat, because, the Chinese companies are respected investors in Hungary. They do contribute to not only the Hungary economy to be on a growth path, but to the European economy to be on a growth path as well. Why? Because these Chinese investors aim at producing electric batteries for the electric cars, which are being produced by the Western European companies. So these Western European companies, which are producing electric cars in Hungary, they usually ask me to bring their Chinese suppliers close to them, possibly next door, into Hungary. And, I've been in touch with the Chinese investors for the last 9 years, and there was not a single occasion when a Chinese investor or the Chinese state itself would have attached any kind of political expectation to an investment. So it's a purely rational, mutually beneficial economic cooperation, which we respect a lot. And I do believe that our good relationship with China on investments contribute to the success of the European economy as well.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks a lot.
And there I was just talking to Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjarto.